Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from the Great Northwest United Electric Co-op in Savannah. We are joined by United States Senator from the great state of Missouri, Eric Schmitt. Welcome back to the show.
It is great to be back. Great to be back.
So you've been doing this new job for 8 months now. How's it going?
It's great. It's obviously an incredible honor. I was sworn in as the 2000th senator. You're sitting at Harry Truman's desk that, Tom Eagleton had and Kit Bond had and Blunt had. There's a lot of history there. And so my family came up, and it's the first time my family really had been to Washington. And so to experience that with everybody, including my son, my daughters, in early January was just the honor of a lifetime. And then since then, we've really kind of hit the ground running with committee assignments, good committees with Armed Services and the Commerce Committee, building relationships, getting things done, and pushing back against a lot of the abuses of the Biden administration.
Talk about some of the work you've done on these committees. Whiteman is in for a whole nother round of funding. They might not have got it. It seems like a pretty good first-year feather in your cap.
Yeah, so being on the Armed Services Committee, it's an important, serious committee, and we wanted to make sure we accomplished a few things. One was take care of Missouri. Missouri has a proud tradition of men and women of service serving our country, and we've got two bases with Fort Leonard Wood and Whiteman that serve really important functions for our national security. Whiteman in particular is the home of the B-2 bomber. That is part of the nuclear triad. It is really, really important for deterrence and a lot of other reasons. And so we were able to make sure Whiteman is supported. We were able to get $30 million in for new housing at Fort Leonard Wood. We've got some legislation in there that would make sure spouses, when they're traveling, can get it back into their profession, teaching, nursing, whatever. We worked with the Democrat senator on that in a bipartisan way. And so, making sure Missouri's interests were, here in the Great Northwest. I'm heading to St. Joe where they've got the 139th there. We've got some money, make sure they've got the infrastructure that they need to compete for the next, line of
How'd
aircraft.
You like the fair this year?
I loved it. It was great. I love going there. I do. And you get to talk to a
special collection of folks.
Well, you get to talk to real people.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's unscripted, and you're walking around and you're eating, ribs and you're flipping steaks and just talking to real people. So it's always fun.
All right, I owe you. You were right. It doesn't taste good coming out of my mouth. I remember about this time last year, you were suing some local school districts.
Yeah.
And I was giving you grief, and you were telling me you don't understand these elitists. I got to look one in the eye. I saw everything everybody saw, elitism. Who the heck are you to be someone's parent? Get out of my way. I'm the totalitarian dictator. It's a guy named, I'm sorry, he likes to go by doctor, although if there's a heart attack, still call 911, but Dr. Cornman. It was the living embodiment, everything you saw. You were so right about that. And I really think some of the victories you've had, and then just more and more people that meet folks like Cornman, Dr. Cornman, sorry, it is astonishing to me how right you were the whole time.
To this day, Scott, I'll tell you that no matter where I go, parents will still come up to me and say, thank you for standing up and fighting for our kids. Ultimately, the fight was for people to be able to make their own decisions. And we know now, as we talked about then, the real problems, whether they're psychological or loss of learning, from these ridiculous mask mandates. They're ineffective. It was a power grab is all it ever was. And so, whether it was the vaccine mandate, we took that to the Supreme Court and won. The student loan debt forgiveness scam, we took that to the Supreme Court and won. The mask mandates, we got them to back off. So I'm really proud of that work. And at the end of the day, it was about fighting for parents and kids.
As a parent, it doesn't really feel good to say, but you were right. I saw it, the living embodiment of it, and it is it ticks you off, and then it's a little chilling to think other people have to deal with this kind of stuff just to send their kids to school. It's an amazing thing that in hindsight, I thought you did too much, but now looking back, I'm not sure you did enough.
Well, and I think the other important fact here is this is the playbook. COVID sort of exposed the playbook, right? And so whether it's climate alarmism next or another round of masks that people want to push, the playbook is stoke fear, stoke division, claim emergency powers, and
I'm smarter than you.
Yeah, and
you're just an annoying parent in my way.
Yeah, the experts will decide. Yep. I trust Missourians to make these decisions. And by the way, if you want to walk around, a park outside with 10 masks on your face in the middle of summertime, this is America. Yep. But you shouldn't tell the 5-year-old that they've got to be masked up all day long when the parents object to it.
So let's talk about free speech. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it really sinks home to a guy busy raising a family, working a job, some of this free speech stuff, it is it's direct, but it's almost like the frog in the pot. You turn up a little bit at a time, you don't realize it. Some of this free speech stuff, when you look at the aggregate, really matters in how it shapes the debate in this country.
I think one of the fundamental things of what it means to be an American is the ability to speak your mind, right, to express yourself. It's a pressure release valve. It means that you could go in the town square, the virtual town square, and say your piece. And it's incumbent upon all of us to defend that, including the speech that you don't agree with, right? What we were seeing in that Missouri versus Biden lawsuit when we filed it, and of course it was panned by the editorial boards as another frivolous lawsuit. Well, a judge agreed on the 4th of July that the government was engaged in a vast censorship enterprise, Orwellian. We've never seen anything like this before in our country, Scott. It's terrifying, and I don't care if you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. The idea that the federal government, with its immense power, was colluding with and coordinating with and coercing some of the biggest companies in the history world, these big tech giants, to silence Americans, millions of posts, is wrong. And I'm proud that we stood up to that. And we're continuing that work in the Senate with some legislation, too.
I think that pressure valve thing is a good point, because I do think probably those folks would have told you they were doing what they thought was the greater good. They were trying to not let certain people talk because they were afraid folks would listen to them and maybe hurt them. I can almost see how in their minds they think, but I think that's the most dangerous thing, because what I think you really do is you take all those voices that maybe they're wrong, maybe they're extreme, and now it's like, okay, why don't you want me to listen to that? I think they actually probably do more damage than good they were trying to do.
And you don't fight speech you don't agree with censorship. Yeah. You fight with more speech. You make an argument. You try to convince people. So when anybody's telling you that if the government's the arbiter of truth, that's false. That's not the government's job. You get to decide. I get to decide and have all the facts out there and all the arguments out there, and people can make up their own minds. That's why this is such a central issue and why we're so passionate about it, and why I filed legislation in the Senate to say, if your First Amendment rights have been violated, if this bill that I filed passes, you can sue individual government actors. No more hiding behind these bureaucracies in the federal government. You individually will be liable for suppressing somebody's First Amendment rights. I just think it's a way, and if you want to understand the frustration that's out there, Scott, and you get around the state a lot, just like I do. I've been in, Sikeston, Cape, Springfield, Branson, Sedalia, Kansas City, Savannah, St. Joe, Kirksville in this August recess. If you want to understand that frustration, they feel like when they send people to Washington, things don't really change much in their life, and that's because we have this permanent Washington, this administrative state that we need to dismantle. And the bandwidth of what's acceptable speech is narrowing and sometimes censored. People just want to be heard. They want to speak their mind, and I think that's worth fighting for.
It feels like it's a different era. Everybody wants to think they live in the most dramatic era, but I feel like for my lifetime, it's an interesting time to be alive. You talk about things like that you don't always see directly unless somebody files a bill or files a lawsuit. But with President Trump, everybody sees what's happening right now. Now look, do I think Donald Trump can be a jerk? Absolutely. Was he a pretty successful president? Well, kind of. But I think it's a chilling effect when you start jailing your political opponents. Do I think Hillary Clinton could have been charged with something? Probably could have. And a guy that gets tagged for not being a statesman, and Trump decided not to. And a guy that most people think is a very statesman-like man, Joe Biden, has stood by and had his administration try to imprison his rival. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know. What Donald Trump's a jerk 24/7. Maybe he did something illegal, but I kind of don't believe he needs to be arrested every third day. It is a scary thing to happen, an odd time to be alive.
It's un-American, and the idea that we're in a place now where we're jailing political opponents, where if your last name is Clinton or Biden, you're protected by the Justice Department. But if your name is Trump, we're going to try to throw you in jail for the rest of your life and deny Americans the ability to vote for him to be president is your point, chilling. And we can't accept that in this country. It's banana republic stuff. It's what they do other places. And can you imagine, by the way, if President Trump, when he came in office, would have arrested Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama for the Russia hoax? Can you imagine the reaction that would have been out there?
Hopefully there would have been outrage.
Yeah, and so all the things that they accuse the people who suffer from Trump derangement syndrome on the left, all the things that they said he was going to do, they're doing. And I think it's terrible for the country. We've got to get back to a place where you can have discourse, but criminalizing dissent, jailing political opponents is a very, very dangerous road to go down, and something we should reject in this country.
I think there are a lot of folks that were had tired of President Trump. I mean, he is a lot, right? There's always some drama going on. But I think it's maybe rekindled some Missourians' interest in seeing him become president again. There was always a lot of interest, let's be honest. Missouri is a place Trump's popular. I think folks kind of just like, oh, all the time with this. But now, I mean, personally, I'm someone that can get tired of the rhetoric, but I'm like, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I think. Look, I've endorsed President Trump. I was in Iowa last week for him. I think this is an opportunity for the American people to push back at what they see as maybe some of the greatest excesses and abuse we've ever seen from the Justice Department and the broader administrative state. So I think it adds momentum to his candidacy as a way to say we are not going to accept that in this country.
Well, this is the point of the interview when I would ask you about the Cardinals. But that's just such a nightmare right now.
Oh, the days when we would have our red jackets on and talk about playoffs. That feels like a lifetime ago.
You got plans for October? Because mine's open. But there was one bright spot. I'm going to ask Kelton if he would just in 1 second here roll the footage, the congressional baseball game.
Yeah.
Before we put the footage up, set the scene for what we're looking at here.
So this is interesting. So I got asked to play, and the practices were very early, 5:45 East Coast time. So that was 4:45 Missouri time for practices. Whew. So it was a commitment, but it was fun. So we practiced. There were 27,000 people in the stadium. My family was there. They had me playing left field, batting cleanup. So a little pressure the first game, but it was so cool to be on that field.
All right, I'm going to hand him my phone. I'm going to have you just push play. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, let's walk me through here. You're up.
All right, so the
bases loaded?
Bases loaded. First at bat, I walked 4 straight pitches, so I wasn't getting a lot of pitches. But I figured coming up, because we had some BP, I had a decent BP, so the Democrats saw that. So I thought, look, bases loaded, I'm probably going to get a pitch to hit.
Let's roll the tape right now.
So the pitch, it's up in my eyes, so it was enticing. So got a good swing on it. And, bases loaded. I thought, I'm not going to settle for a double here. I got to get to third. So I got around the bases okay, although I thought I was probably moving faster than I really was.
Well, it's probably
but
good,
stand-up triple, and that kind of really, the game at that point was out of hand. We ended up winning 16-6, so it was kind of a key moment in the game.
Did you think about going in David freestyle where you pop on your knees and... Or are you just kind of out of breath after you've ran that far?
I did, and I actually reached out to David because, as you know, little known fun fact, I coached him in high school, and I told him about this, and he was like, just like Game 6. I'm like, not quite. Or I might have said that, not quite like Game 6. But, man, it was fun. My family was there, and the other thing about it was I would never – there was only 2 senators that played. The average age of the Senate is 68.
Older, yeah.
So it was a great opportunity for me to develop some relationships with a lot of House members who were out there, and so that was fun to get to know people. Certainly the first year, but it was fun. It was great to be out there.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoy the Great Northwest.
Yep, good to see you.
We'll be right back with our panel. We're going to have Pat Conway on. I guess I've been looking forward to having a long time on after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Thanks for joining us. Justice and Journalism with Judge Mike Carter. What I like to do is bring facts and circumstances from around the metro area with some local politicos, charitable causes, and let you decide for yourself if you like what's going on.
I'm in this for public service.
400 qualified jurors in some of the rural counties. They're actually really hard to find.
When you're talking about low-level nonviolent offenders, when you put them in jail, you increase the likelihood that they turn into a serious offender.
Justice and Journalism with me, Judge Mike Carter.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This week in Missouri Politics from the Great Northwest. We're in Savannah, the headquarters of the United Electric Co-op, joined by two folks that absolutely personify the Great Northwest. Representative Bill Falkner, thank you so much for making the time.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
And Pat Conway, former representative, clerk, commission. We could do his resume for a long time. I'm so honored to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Scott, it's good to be here, and welcome up to Northwest Missouri. There's very few times I get to leave St. Joseph and go north for an event, so this is a good experience.
Well, let's jump right into it. Tell me how things are going up here. How's the economy? How's jobs? How are things getting along?
Well, in my opinion, I think things are improving. I think if we can find the workforce people to get in and get the jobs that are open for people, all of our major industries are looking for employees. And it looks to be a great year for the agriculture community, which is really, really something St. Joseph is dependent on.
Well, I tell you, the rain came in for the western part of the state that didn't quite make it east.
You know, every time we would need it, it came this year. And I know there's many, many years of family and friends that I have were in the farming industry that were waiting for the clouds, but this year they sure showed up.
Representative Faulkner, it does feel like St. Joseph's a place that is growing. It is on the move.
It is, and we've got good people running it and trying to move everything forward. But like Pat alluded to, you know, getting the workers educated in the different fields that we need them, that's been our priority up here and something that we're working very hard on.
It's amazing. You know, you almost hear folks panic anymore, but Governor Parson, when he came in, he kind of went from a highly unserious administration to one that was very serious. But the workforce development, it's a phrase that is frankly hard to explain exactly what that is. But essentially it means companies need workers, but they really need workers with some skills. And it's been a little hard sometimes to get those folks coached up to where they can have and you know, an employee wants a good job. Right. So you got to make it easy to have the skills to get it if they're out there.
Yeah, and you know, for a long time we were telling everybody to go to college and get a college education, but some kids are not, you know, they don't want to take that route.
Sure.
And there's other options that are very profitable for young people to get involved with.
Well, theoretically, you go to college or grad school or whatever to get a better job to make more money. But I'm not sure tech schools don't give you a better path to more money sometimes than some of the college stuff.
You're absolutely correct.
But I got to tell you, we can't not talk about this. Every show we talk about rural broadband. We're here at one of the most successful co-ops in the state at rural broadband. How big a deal is it to have a co-op like United running that rural fiber? It opens up so many doors that just would be closed without it.
Right, and it's important for schools and for hospitals and just for the average individuals to have the ability to have that access.
And I think, you know, and the competition is going to be there as they move into the market. It will certainly probably lower the rates for a lot of the people who are watching on Cablevision or have the ability to stream. So it's a godsend, I think, for the people of Northwest Missouri and especially St. Joseph to have a competitive industry.
It feels like to me almost every technological innovation has driven people off the farm, out of rural Missouri to the cities. But it feels like rural broadband is the first innovation that really brings folks and lets you have that good job. You can buy a bigger house, you have a school district maybe you prefer, and live that rural way of life you might want to live or your grandparents lived, because you can actually have a job that's connected to that. But the fiber is the key thing.
And the fiber will allow those grade school students and high school students who didn't have access to improve their educational abilities and be able to gain from it. So it's going to be a win-win all the way around.
Mr. Conway, I want to ask you, this used to be a very, very competitive place with Democrats and Republicans. Just in your professional career, I remember Sidney Johnson and different politicians. Northwest Missouri was a place that elected a lot of Democrats. That has changed.
Well, you know, going back to even when Bob Griffin, part of his district from Cameron, moved into Buchanan County, and he was one of our state reps. Yeah, it has been, and traditionally it was. But the odd thing, Scott, is that it's always been the individual. Did you know Richard Nixon won Buchanan County all 3 times that he ran?
I did not know
60,
that.
68, and 72. So there's the people here pay attention to what's going on politically, and I think all around in Northwest Missouri, it's always more about the individual than the party specifically. And it's
Once
the
a guy
thoughts.
from my neck of the woods, Warren Hearns, ran for governor on putting the college up here.
Yes, he did.
And folks remembered.
Yeah,
and
they
I
did.
think he did well.
And the cement road around the university now is John Downs Drive, who was pivotal back in his day of getting the funding not only for Missouri Western but for Missouri Southern and get them to college status, state status, and now university status. So there's been some tremendous politicians out of Northwest Missouri who went back to Jeff City and did really good work for us.
Representative, it does feel like, though, that used to, while it is on the person, and I think still is, you got a lot better shot as a Republican as you used to have.
Yeah, I believe it's true to a certain extent, but I think Pat's right. I think in our community, we kind of look at the individual, his background, and what he can do for the community. Like Pat, every time Pat ran for something, I voted for Pat, and he was good for Buchanan County. He was good for the city of St. Joe, and I think that's what is still makes up a lot of the voting here.
Do you worry right now that in places a little bit like St. Joseph, maybe a little bit further south, Platte County, Clay County, Republicans have done very well lately, but you're seeing a little erosion of that. The abortion law, if I had to guess, is probably a little more stringent than some folks in Platte County and Clay County would be. They might be pro-life, but maybe it's a little harsher. Do you worry you might get a receipt for that next fall?
Well, that's always a possibility, and I'm a firm believer there's always room for compromise. And I think there should be some compromise on that issue.
What do you think? I mean, I think maybe my gut tells me that most folks, if you have to say out loud, especially in places like Buchanan, you're going to say they're pro-life. But I'm not sure when they get in that voting booth, some folks don't think, well, maybe this has been a little extreme.
I think that's true, and I think some of the legislation and I think the grading of the legislature, some of the legislation that I tried to vote pro-life during my term in Jefferson City, though, was so far on the edge that you just couldn't vote for it. And I think that's the issue. The other issue was always Second Amendment, and you had to really look at the legislation, and sometimes it just was hard to take a vote on something that the constituency was really split on.
Well, I've always felt like in Jefferson County, Buchanan County, same, whether they're voting for City Johnson, Charlie Shields, or Tony Lukemeyer, they were voting for pro-gun, pro-life candidates.
Exactly.
Now, there's always, I think most Missourians, I mean, the extremists get attention in the legislature, they get attention on Facebook, but I think most folks see those things, even though that's their position, there is a limit to where it's like, okay, that's maybe a little much.
Well, and I think Representative Falkner, and I'll call him Bill, I'll try not to call him Billy like I did, but I think he and I had the same district. You know, Bill came into District 10 after I left, and we both really, our voting records are pretty similar. I mean, it's more constituency. I mean, you can't just kowtow to your majority caucus or minority caucus. You have to be an independent thinker in Buchanan County and listen to the people and not necessarily go 100% on the political side.
Representative, tell me an issue that right now you're looking at towards next session, over the next 2 or 3 years, that'll make a big difference for this part of the state.
Well, I think anything strengthening the 139th and our air base over there, anything we can do to encourage them to advance their mission. And right now we're looking at a possible new bridge that may be able to tie the two communities closer together. And we're doing studies right now to see if we can get the railroad up to that height. And so we're working on a few things. But I think the 139th is a huge economic engine for this area.
Representative, tell me something. You know, when I think of St. Joseph, I think of you. Tell me something that would impact St. Joseph, Northwest Missouri. What's something the state government could get involved with that would actually matter to the folks' lives up here?
Well, I think a lot of it is transportation, access. You know, county government was formed so that people could come from the rural areas to get to the cities. And I think,
don't you know an old fella in Washington now that's the chairman of that?
I believe we do.
Sam Graves got something to do with transportation
Yes,
now?
he does. And I think Sam will help focus on that, and the transportation will allow for a better manufacturing industry, better economics for the workforce. And as Bill mentioned, you know, we're making strides as far as getting into technical workers between the school district, Missouri Western, and Hilliard's schools. So I think we're going to start creating a workforce that will attract these biggest businesses to St. Joseph.
Last question. Folks talk about Donald Trump whether they want to or not. Representative, it feels to me like there's a segment of folks that thought he may have done a good job as president, kind of liked that he told it like it was, but I think the act was getting tired until he started getting arrested every other day. Now, arresting a guy once, but it's like, okay, everybody it seems like Democrats, if you're elected, start arresting the guy. I'm not sure that whatever corrosive effect Trump has on the country isn't exasperated, new life breathed into it by just the glut of charges.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think this just plays right into Donald Trump's hands.
I do too.
Yeah.
Representative, you've seen a lot of politicians come and go. Something tells me you've not seen many like the former president. I got in my gut that Republicans, I think, Democrats hated him as much as Republicans loved him, and if you bring him up in any even pleasant company, you'd find 2 or 3 folks that were crazy, one way or the other about him. I kind of think, like most politicians, he'd run his course to a certain extent.
That's possibly true. I mean,
but now he's back, probably bigger than ever.
It was such a big transition from the Obama era to the Trump era, and I think that created a little diversity, not diversity, but it created a lot of animosity in between people. And I think what you have to find that middle road that you can work with people. You talked about the old-time politicians. The thing that happened in the era, and I started out working in 1972 when Jerry Litton ran first on a campaign. And what I've found over the years is that, yes, the majority party or the minority party might have switched, but the nucleus of the individuals that are within that community, they have not really shifted their ideals. So the brand may have changed, but I think the individuals are pretty much similar.
There was something about Trump in this state, though, that made people turn out and vote for him in numbers that Missouri hadn't seen in a long time for either party. Talking FDR levels in this state. I did feel, though, that folks were like, okay, I've had enough. It's just the constant drama. And I almost think there's a certain unfairness about what's happened. And while he's not a sympathetic figure at all, matter of fact, he might be the least sympathetic person I've ever seen in politics, you're like, now come on. There's an all come on factor, and I think whatever they didn't like about Trump, they're going to get a lot more of it by overplaying a hand.
That's a possibility. But I think what's necessary is that you be able to go to a place where you can get the truth and to look at both sides of every issue and look at both sides of the individual who's getting the publicity. We're in a brand new society than when I started in politics. You can't run a campaign like we used to. Yard signs and that nature, those are, you didn't have the media, you couldn't afford the media. Now with social media, you can do just about anything. So I think that influences a lot of the perceptions of what people have on any given issue.
Well, Representative Bill Faughn, former Representative Pat Conway, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back here in 2 weeks for This Week in Missouri Politics. Until then, catch Justice and Journalism with Judge Mike Carter. Fun show, breaks down news and just Mike's personality. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.